This was something that really didn't get talked about hardly at all this year in relation to gaming news, but I do find it very interesting to say the least. But apparently, according to rumors, we're supposed to be getting a Metro 2023 movie sometime in 2024. And apparently, this movie was supposed to premiere sometime in early 2022, but for whatever reason, it never happened. And based off of what I know, this particular film adaptation of Metro 2033, it's been in production since the mid to late teens, and pretty much it was supposed to come out a lot sooner than it did, but like the movie like itself was teased by the guy who wrote the novel, Dmitry Glukowski, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, and and it turns out that one of the reasons why the movie was initially canceled is because the people who produced it, it was like two Russian people, but I can't pronounce their names. I don't want to, risk butchering their names or anything. But apparently, they wanted to Americanize the movie by setting it in Washington, opposed to Moscow, and and if you look at the video game that came out in 2010, the setting of the place takes place in Moscow. So having it set in Washington, like DC, and opposed to Moscow, that's going to pretty much like ruin the entire movie altogether, and it could potentially like ruin the series if it's not done right. So I kind of understand, the movie being canceled because of that. They want to stay as true to the novel and the video game as possible. But you look at Metro 2020, or sorry, Metro 2033. Um, like the video game is very similar to like Fallout 3 or whatever. It's very similar to the Fallout series where you have a story that focuses on a main character who's like a survivor of a nuclear war, and the entire like environment and setting is very post-apocalyptic in the future, and it's pretty much all about survival and all that other stuff because the game from 2010 was a first-person survival horror shooter game, and it's one that a lot of people feel is criminally underrated in the sense where it was big when it came out, but as the decade went by, it got talked about less and less. And I think that's mainly because you look at all the games that came out in the teens decade. It was easy for Metro 2033 to get overshadowed for the most part, especially like within the first person shooter genre. I feel like the first person shooter genre got less and less popular as the decade progressed. It's still popular like right now, but it's not as big as it was during the 2000s or the early teens or anything like that. But as far as Metro 2033 the movie is concerned, um basically there's been news about it appearing during the first day of 2024. Now, I don't know whether or not it's going to be released in theaters or whether or not it's going to be released on Netflix or one of those streaming apps, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people are expecting this to happen sometime in 2024. But then at the same time, some people wonder what type of reception this would probably get, especially considering, the war between, Ukraine and Russia invading Ukraine back in 2022. Whether or not like the film is going to be seen in a different light than it would have been if it had been like released like before 2022 or what have you. But I do feel that it's pretty cool that Metro 2033 it's getting its own film adaptation, and I honestly feel like the storytelling aspect is going to be very intriguing because um, the game was mainly a first person shooter type game, so obviously I can only imagine that the film is going to be shot like a normal movie. Everything's gonna be like in third person, and the whole survival horror element is still going to be there and all that. But I don't think this is something that like various gaming websites have necessarily like talked too much about within the past couple of months or even past year for that matter. But I do feel that it's something that's a big deal, even though there's a lot of or there's a couple of big, movies that's coming out, next year that can potentially overshadow this one. Craven the Hunter's supposed to be getting his own movie next year. We're supposed to be getting another Venom movie next year. We might be getting another Sonic the Hedgehog movie in 2024. So I do feel that this is something that can easily get overshadowed, even though it's a big deal. And I do feel that if Metro 2033 was released like in the mid teens or it came out a lot sooner than it did, it probably would have been more newsworthy. And I do feel that it would have attracted more mainstream attention. But but yeah, it's pretty cool that something's being done with Metro 2033. It's getting its own standalone film adaptation. And honestly, I'm looking forward to hearing more news about this upcoming film and whether or not it's coming out in 2024 and what's its official release date is going to be as it pertains to next year.